I will be Shanti Mantra. Om Vang Me Manasi Pradisthida Mano Me Vachi Pradisthidam Aviravir Maedhi Vedasya Maani Sthaha Sutam Me Ma Prakasihi Anenadhitena Horatran Santadhami Ritam Vadishyami Satyam Vadishyami Tanmamavadu Tadvaktaramavadu Avatu Mam Avadu Vaktaram Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om, may my speech be fixed in the mind. May my mind be fixed in the speech. O self-manifested Atman, do thou manifest thyself unto me, O my mind and speech. May ye be fit to reveal unto me the highest spiritual knowledge. May I not forget what I have heard and studied, without forgetting what I have learned. May I be able to study day and night. The right will speak. The truth will I speak. May Brahman protect me. May Brahman protect the preceptor. May Brahman protect me. May Brahman protect the preceptor. Om peace, peace, peace. This is Shanti Mantra and its translation into English. So this is how we begin this particular Upanishad, Aitareya Upanishad. So Aitareya Upanishad is one of the 10 major Upanishads which are being expounded by Shankaracharya. So I want to repeat again what I said in previous occasions. These Upanishads were interpreted and given a spiritual, a philosophical, a metaphysical meaning and significance and relevance by Adi Shankaracharya, who wrote commentaries on 10 Upanishads. Of course, there is a view that the available commentary on the Shvedasudhara Upanishad is also from Shankaracharya. Anyway, 10 Upanishads are well known, and the Aitareya is the 8th Upanishad in that series. Isha, Kena, Kata Prasna, Munda, Mandukya, Taitiri, Aitareya, then 9th and 10th Chandogya and Brihadaranyaka. So Aitareya comes the 8th in the series. Now, one important aspect of this Upanishad is it is from the Rigveda Samhita. It is the only Upanishad that is from Rigveda among the 10 major Upanishads. Another well-known Upanishad, Kaushitaki, is also from Rigveda, but this is the most important Upanishad because it is one of the 10 Upanishads which were expounded and commented upon by the great Adi Shankaracharya. Its importance is that it contains one of the 4 great statements of Vedic literature. These statements are called Mahavakyas. Mahavakya means the great statement. So, in fact, Aitareya Upanishad, Mandukya Upanishad, Chandogya Upanishad, and Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. These 4 Upanishads contain Mahavakyas. So each Veda, each of the 4 Vedas is represented by one Mahavakya. It means great statement. Now, these statements represent our spiritual evolution. That's why one Mahavakya is called Tattwamasi. It is from Chandogya Upanishad. It is from it is from Samaveda. Chandogya Upanishad is from Samaveda, and this particular Mahavakya, Tattvam Asi, which is perhaps the most important and most well-known Mahavakya statement. It is from Samaveda and from Chandogya Upanishad, which belongs to Samaveda. It comes in the 6th chapter of the Chandogya Upanishad. where a father is teaching the highest spiritual metaphysical truth to his son. He called Tattwamasi. Literally means the truth, the ultimate, the absolute spiritual truth that you are seeking is actually within you. It is present in you. So if you meditate, if you contemplate, if you do introspection, and you begin your inward journey, then beyond your body, beyond the senses, beyond the mind, beyond the intellect, you find one spiritual truth, this divine spark within you. And that is all-pervading, that is immanent, present in everything and present everywhere. That reality is you yourself, it is within you. Tattwamasi. It is called Upadesha Vakya. Upadesha Vakya means a statement of instruction. An instruction that comes from a teacher. Now remember, this instruction, this ancient spiritual word symbol has got a great spiritual power, not because of the consonants and vowels involved in that structure, but because this divine word was meditated upon, contemplated upon for thousands of years by the great sages of India, and they realized this truth through their own introspection, through their own purity of life, their own meditation. So that word symbol has got a spiritual potency. Just like, well, if you say Tattwamasi, you are that. That particular expression has no significance. It is only maybe a translation of this divine statement. But Tattwamasi was an instruction given by teachers for thousands of years to their students, who many of them renounced their kingdoms, their homes, traveled in search of a great guru, and practiced meditation, austerity, self-restraint, non-violence, truthfulness, all these disciplines, and then this instruction was given to them. And then they meditate. So it's just like electric wire. There's a great difference between a dead wire and a wire through which electricity is passing. If you touch an electric wire, it has a power in it. But the same wire there may be another wire which may look very similar to an electric wire, but it's dead wire. So remember, these word symbols called mantras. Mantras mean mananat trayate iti mantra. A word symbol which protects you, which takes you to the highest spiritual inner mystical experience when you meditate upon it, when you contemplate upon it, when you do prayer and austerity, when you practice austerity, uttering this sacred word symbol. So Tattwamasi is the instruction of a teacher, so called the Mahavakya, is Upadesha Vakya. Upadesha means instruction, Vakya means statement. Now, after getting this instruction, maybe a student may practice austerity meditation for a long time. Then he will not just intellectually understand it, but spiritually experience it within his own being, in his own life. And a Buddha could do that. That's why he became the enlightened one. Buddha means in Sanskrit, the enlightened one. Like that, the great sages of India, during Vedic times, they practiced and they became spiritually enlightened. Now, that enlightenment, that inner illumination is symbolized by the word Aham Brahmasmi. I am that supreme truth, divine truth, present everywhere. The divine reality that is present everywhere. When you realize this, then the first thing is you become a good human being. You can't hate anyone. You can't think evil. You can think of doing harm to anybody. You can't be rude to anyone. You will look upon the whole creation, not only human beings, as one spiritual family. You will naturally, instinctively practice non-violence, truthfulness. You become a universal person. That's called Anubhuti Vakya, means the statement that that represents or reflects inner experience. It's called Anubhuti Vakya. It comes in the Chandogya Upanishad, which is from Samaveda. Now, between these two levels of spiritual journey, that is, you get instruction and then you get experience. There are two intermediary stages. You understand the meaning of the instruction you receive. And during that time, you do a lot of introspection. You try to understand the meaning. That particular Mahavakya is called Prajnanam Brahma. Means, what is Prajnanam? The universal awareness is Brahman. It is the highest spiritual reality. Awareness is Brahman. This is called Prajnanam Brahma. It comes in the Aitareya Upanishad that we are going to discuss today. It is from Rigveda. Now, there is another Mahavakya. It is called Ayam Atma Brahma. It comes in the Mandukya Upanishad, which is from Atharva Veda. So there are four Vedas: Rigveda, Yajurveda, Samaveda, and Atharva Veda. This particular Upanishad contains one important Mahavakya, means great statement. It's called Lakshanavakya. It is called Prajnanam Brahma. What it means, the awareness is the absolute reality. We will discuss that in detail, then get an idea. This is not so well known, so we will discuss in detail. Now, why do we study the Upanishads? Now, we study these great scriptures because they contain instructions and teachings about things that we cannot understand by other means. Hindu epistemology believes in 10 tools of knowledge. You can, according to Aristotle, according to ancient Greek thought, say direct perception, inference, analogy, and all. But Hindu epistemology is much more elaborate. It believes in direct perception, inference, analogy, its comparison, well-better testimony, then even the awareness of the absence of something is actually a kind of understanding, presumption, then mythology, then external gestures, and excluded middle, which those of you have read Sherlock Holmes, he uses the technique of deduction, leaving out all the irrelevant things. Suppose you have got 20 people in a room and somebody had kept a heavy box on the rack, on the shelf. You look for a man who must be the mischief maker. So you leave out 19 persons, where 19 of them are very short and very weak. They cannot hold a big heavy weight. The 20th fellow is a very hefty, muscular fellow. So he should be the man who has lifted this heavy box and kept on the top layer of the shelf. So it's called, the method of deduction. That is also actually one of the epistemological tools in Hindu epistemology. It's called parisesha, means taking out after everything is left out. So those of you who are interested more, you can see Sanskrit terms are pratyaksha, anumana, upamana, shabda, arthapatti, anubalabdhi, sambhava, aitihya, cheshta, and parisesha. These are the 10 tools of epistemology. So theory of knowledge, an important branch of ancient philosophy, Greek and Latin philosophy, and you can find examples in the works of Augustine, Aquinas, and others. So this is just to give just background. So the idea is, when we cannot understand the highest spiritual truth by reading a book, by using direct perception or inference, or by talking to somebody from any other source of information, then we turn to some ancient spiritual mystical works. That's why Shankaracharya says, Pratyakshena animityava yastu upayo na buddhyade enam vidanti vedena tasma vedasya vedata. What it means is, Shankaracharya says, when you cannot get an information, the nature of the absolute reality, let us say in monotheistic language, the nature of God. You cannot just from a book, if you say this book tells you all about God, then you are limiting God, you are limiting the idea of God within a single book. God is far beyond a book or names or language. Master Eckhart himself, who lived 400 years after Shankaracharya passed away, he himself makes a statement: the highest reality, Godhead, is beyond books, beyond words, beyond definitions. Even the Holy Trinity cannot exhaust the true nature of the highest spiritual truth. This is Master Eckhart, arguably the greatest mystic philosopher of Greek tradition. Christian theological tradition. Now we are coming to the book proper. So I shall read one mantra. I don't have time to go through the entire text, but I have tried to give, it is certainly not easy, but I shall make an attempt to give you a clear idea of what this Upanishad is all about from a purely philosophical perspective. The first mantra of this Upanishad says, Hari Om Atma va idameka evagre asid na nit kinchana mishad. This is the first mantra. This mantra is related to the last part of this Upanishad. And the third chapter of this Upanishad deals with the highest philosophy, and it contains a description of the great statement, Mahavakya. So that's why the most important part of this Upanishad is the third chapter, which expounds Prajnanam Brahma. I mean, the unqualified, universal, spiritual awareness is the absolute reality. We may call it consciousness, spirit. It is the highest understanding of the absolute reality. Upanishads or the Vedas do not reject other ideas. Suppose if I say, I want to go to a temple and pray there, I want to read a holy book, and I want to pray to a deity, Upanishads do not tell you you are wrong. You are right. We can go to any place of worship. We can read any holy book. But the highest truth is beyond that. Means true spirituality is something that we practice not only inside a temple or a place of worship, but true spirituality is something that we worship in our everyday activity, in our everyday life. When we eat food, when we talk to people, when you help somebody, when you speak, when you feel, in all our everyday activities, we must practice spirituality. We must practice the presence of God. Those of you who read Brother Lawrence, the practice the presence of Lord, you may have heard of these things in the Western Christian mystical tradition. So that is the highest understanding of spirituality according to Upanishads. So this particular mantra says, in the beginning, before creation, Atma was the only reality. There was nothing else. This is how this Upanishad begins. So creation, nature, all these things came into existence, but creator and creation are not two separate entities. Creation and creator are the same. That is the highest spiritual experience. Remember, it is not a philosophical doctrine. It is an experience that we feel, that we reach when we meditate, when we pray, when we practice unselfishness, when we practice purity in life, in word, in deed, in thought, in actions, then what happens? Slowly, our understanding of the absolute reality, to be more precise, our understanding of God begins to evolve as we evolve in our own spiritual life. In direct proportion to our own evolution, our understanding of God also evolves. At the beginning, we may think, well, I can go to a particular place and meditate, and then God will be happy. There is nothing wrong in it, but that's only kindergarten of spiritual life. As you evolve more and more, as you go to the college and university in education, so also as we go beyond external rituals, beyond mechanical practices, as we begin to experience the presence of God in our own heart, not only when we are engaged in spiritual practices, disciplines, but also even in the midst of our secular duties, when we think of God as the all-pervading divine reality, then we look upon the whole humanity as one spiritual family. How do we reach there? That is the subject of discussion in this chapter 3, section 1. So I shall read some of these texts because it may not be proper for us to just to give a verbal, a second-hand description of the Upanishad philosophy. So I shall try to read some of this. So in this section, please remember chapter 3 of the Aitareya Upanishad, first section. Here is a discussion going on. A number of spiritual seekers like ourselves have gathered, not in front of Zoom, but they have gathered in an ancient Indian forest hermitage. And there they are discussing what is the nature of absolute reality. So you can think of, let's say, 7th millennium BC, so to speak. Rigveda Rigveda is the oldest of the 4 Vedas. So, of course, we don't fully endorse the views of modern historians, but let us say maybe at least 5,000, 6,000 years BC in ancient Indian forest hermitage. Some sages have gathered and they're discussing. What are they discussing? The mantra begins like this. Koyam Atma idi vayam upasmahe. It's a Sanskrit word. What it means? Whom do we meditate upon? Upon whom should we meditate? Why this question? In the previous parts of the text, there are references to 2 levels of understanding of the absolute reality. One, Atman, Brahman, is a Sukshma Sharira, internal organs, or Hiranyagarbha, which has entered this subtle body and which activates our senses. This is how we normally, at the beginning of a spiritual journey, we all think, oh, maybe my eyes are functioning. So I'm able to see things because I'm using my eyes. I'm able to hear things because I'm using my ears. I'm able to use my hands. So behind my eyes, behind my ears, behind my mind, behind my intellect, behind my ego system, there should be one guiding power. This is a natural understanding of any spiritual seeker. Well, there are the mighty oceans, rivers, mountains and valleys and clouds, the external world. There should be some mysterious power behind them. Similarly, there should be one inner light, inner power that is guiding my eyes. So you find Yena va rupam pashyati, yena va shabdam shunoti, yena va gandhan ajighati, yena va vacham vyakaroti, yena va swaducha aswaducha vijanati, etc. Anyway, so the mantra goes like this. Who is guiding my ears, my eyes, my senses towards various objects? Is there one subtle power that is activating my senses, my eyes and my ears? That is one view. Another view is Atma Chaitanyam, one supreme reality which is beyond attributes, which is Chaitanyam, supreme consciousness, which is present everywhere. Is that the nature of Atman, or is Atman what you call Hiranyagarbha in the Upanishadic language, Hiranyagarbha or Brahma, is roughly speaking equivalent to what we now call, a kind of different divine beings or monotheistic Godhead. So who is or what is the nature of Atman? Is Atman something that activates my senses, my mind, my intellect? It is called in the Sopadhika, Aparabrahma, Sukshma Sharira, subtle body. Or is Atman beyond all that? Is Atman is the supreme reality, the one who activates my senses of perception, like the eyes and ears, or senses of action? Or is it something beyond all that? Now, finally, the Upanishad concludes that behind every cognition, there is one element which is awareness or knowledge itself. Let us say, when you see an object, you are coming to know that you are seeing a pot. The old Upanishad language, pot. You knowledge of the pot. There are two elements in it, Ghata Jnana in Sanskrit means, Ghata means pot. Jnana means awareness of the existence of the pot. When you see a table, you are aware of the presence of the table. The table is there, but awareness also is there. So what's the difference between awareness of a table and awareness of a pot or any such objects? The difference is awareness remains the same. Jnanam remains the same. Awareness or consciousness remains the same, but at the same time, the object of understanding or cognition changes. So that is an important thing to remember. Every time when you become aware of an object, it's called vritti jnanam, awareness of that particular object. When you're aware of a book, your awareness of the book contains two aspects, awareness and the book. And when you become aware of a table, in that awareness, there is a table and also awareness. But table and book, all these objects will change, but awareness remains unchanging. That unchanging reality is the absolute reality. So the highest reality is described in this Upanishad as awareness, unqualified awareness. When you become aware of different objects, that awareness is qualified or modified, associated with those objects. Objects will change, but awareness itself remains unchanging. So, the Upanishad you find Samjnanam, Ajnanam, Vijnanam, Prajnanam, Meda, Drishti, Dhridir, Matir, Manisha, Jyoti, Smriti, Sankalpa, Kradurasu kamo vashaiti sarvani eva edani prajnanasya namadheyani bhavanti. It's an important mantra. So what it means, different kinds of objectified knowledge are given here. Samjnanam. Samjnanam means just pure awareness, the basic pure awareness, that is samjnanam. So we will take these examples. The Upanishad gives you a series of different dimensions of this awareness. You should remember at the beginning, I must tell you, this Upanishad philosophy here doesn't speak about a God. In fact, it's speaking about the highest possible concept of absolute reality, God. It accepts the idea of a creator God, but it tells you that as you evolve in spiritual life, your understanding of the God idea evolves, and you become aware of the fact there is a universal light, universal awareness, universal consciousness. And that universal consciousness itself is the highest dimension of the absolute reality. So the Upanishad gives a number of examples. For example, you can find here, it begins with samjnanam. Samjnana means basic awareness of perception. See, every living being has got an awareness. See, every person, every insect has got an awareness of it. That what's the difference between a huge rock and an insect or an ant. So you can understand the meaning of what we are talking about here if you listen to this example. A small little ant or a worm is moving in a railway track. It is very, very small, slowly moving. And a huge locomotive, a train, is approaching that crawling insect from the opposite direction. One may believe that the locomotive is more powerful. The huge train, thousands of tonnage, may be much more powerful than the little ant. But the Upanishad tells you, no. Upanishad tells you, in that little ant, there is awareness. What is that awareness? If it wants, it can move away from the railway track by its own will, its own free will. But the huge locomotive doesn't have that freedom. The locomotive gets its ability to stop or change its track only when a brake or when a machine is activated by the driver of the train. The locomotive depends upon borrowed intelligence, borrowed awareness. Its life, its movements depend upon awareness of the driver. But the ant, if it wants, it can move out of the track. Why? Because in that little worm, there is this awareness, this consciousness. It is called samjnana. Now, the Upanishad is giving a number of examples of different dimensions of this awareness, and then finally says, all these awareness, all these are namadheyani, different expressions, different manifestations of the same awareness, the same consciousness. So you find samjnanam, ajnanam, or you may perhaps find among highly evolved persons the ability to know the past, present, and future. Of course, you hear about mystics and saints and sages who could read in the past and who can read the future, who can predict what will happen in future, who can understand and tell you what happened to you maybe in your previous life. Of course, there are many such examples. Of course, Upanishads, Upanishads present you a culture and civilization that believed in rebirth, reincarnation, and so on. So that higher Trikala Jnanam, the ability to understand the past, present, and future, the higher superior awareness is called Ajnanam. So these are different dimensions. So Upanishad is giving a list of different dimensions of this awareness as it functions, and gives an example of how this awareness functions at different levels. Then Vijnana. Vijnana means understand or to know or knowledge about physics, mathematics, different subjects. It is called Vijnana in this context. Then Prajnanam. Prajnanam is not the Prajnanam used in the Mahavakya. Prajnanam here means Pratibha, means the ability to react quickly to a situation and so on. And the Medha. Medha means the ability to understand, retain in your memory what you study. Drishti means vision or insight into things. Dhriti. Dhriti also means courage, firmness. Mati, the ability to reflect, to think, to understand. And the Dhriti means perseverance. Manisha means higher freedom. Jyoti means mental depression, intrepidity. Sankalpa means reflection, imagination. Kradu, Asu, etc. All these are given here. So what are the examples given? Imagination, power of imagination, perseverance, ability to read and understand, to respond to a situation, react to a situation, and also the ability to reflect, to see far into things. People are of different types. There are some people who can see far and deeper into things. There are others who are very superficial in their mental capacities. So all these different intellectual and mental powers are examples of or expressions of different manifestations of this awareness. So remember, Atma is described as the supreme awareness. Awareness means something that you are aware of. That power of awareness can be associated with anything, and when it is associated with anything, that object gets revealed. You become aware of it. So it's a very unique part of the discussion. So great sages gathering in a hermitage, forest hermitage, discussing what's the highest reality. So there is no religious ritual going on. There is no any music, anything going on. And they are thinking, they're contemplating, philosophically analyzing what is the highest reality. A remote resemblance of this Vedic tradition you find in the pre-Christian Greece, where Socrates, Plato, and other ancient Greek philosophers, sophists. Socrates, he sat and stayed somewhere and discussed pure philosophy, pure spiritual philosophy, without depending upon any kind of established religion. That is the greatness of it. So Socrates, Plato, you can find ancient pre-Christian Greek philosophy gives you an idea of this tradition of free discussion as an attempt to understand and realize the highest truth. So this discussion goes on, and then not only that, it says after this, Yesha Brahma, Yesha Indra, Yesha Prajapati, Rete, Sarve Vedaha, Imani cha, Panchamakha Bhudani, Prithvi, Vayu, Akasha, Apo, Yodegim Shityedani, Imani, Shudra Misraniva, Bijani, Idarani, Chaidarani, Chandajani, Charujani, Swedajani, Udbidani, Chashwa, Gava, Purusha, Gastino, Kinjedam Prani, Jangamam, Chapadatri, Chayacha Sthavaram Sarvam Tat Prajnanetam Prajnane Pradishtam Prajnanetro Loka Prajna Pradishta Prajnanam Brahma. I'm not reading it. I'm reading it a bit too fast because I'm not, there's not the right time to discuss every mantra properly, but I'll try to explain. What it means is, it says, everything in this world is Prajnanetra. Prajnanetro Loka. The whole creation, the entire existence is guided by prajna. Prajna means awareness, consciousness. The entire creation, everything in this world, all conceivable types of animals, human beings, creatures, they all are different manifestations, expressions of awareness. It's called Prajnanam Brahma. And that Prajnanam is the entire existence. So now we'll explain. Now, what it says is, this Prajnanam, this Atman, it is one without a second. You can find in this mantra, when you read later this mantra, you find a number of different creatures are mentioned here, Udbijani, Svedajani, etc. Animals or creatures which are born in the womb from eggs and also from sweat, from mosquitoes and so on. Different kinds of animals have different ways of giving birth to their babies, their creation. So they are put together. You can find here this mentioned, Svedajani, Charujani. I mean, certain creatures, they are born from eggs. Certain creatures are born from sweat, moisture. Certain things like plants. You put a seed on the soil, the plant sprouts. By breaking the layer of the soil is called Udbija. So all these examples are given here. And then the Upanishad tells everything, Prajnanetro Lokaka, everything in this world is guided by, expressed by Prajna. Everything is Prajna. So why all these creatures are mentioned here? Three types of differences are rejected. And the Upanishad will conclude by saying that those who realize this truth, what happens to them? They will realize their identity, their oneness with the whole existence. Those who realize this, they don't become armchair theoreticians or philosophers. They become universal in their outlook, in their attitude. So there is a great ethical aspect to this spiritual evolution, spiritual experience. When you realize that the whole creation is an expression of one supreme awareness, it is the same thing as realizing the whole creation is guided by a compassionate God. The same idea. When you realize that one supreme, compassionate, all-knowing God created the whole world, and He is the supreme creator of the whole existence, the whole humanity is one spiritual family. Not only humanity, the whole existence is one spiritual family. You cannot even do harm to trees and mountains. You cannot pollute water. You cannot pollute the air. You cannot cut down trees. You cannot do harm to nature, because nature also is an expression of one supreme awareness. So the highest type of spiritual unity and oneness of existence, that is the supreme message of this particular chapter of Aitareya Upanishad. Now this is brought out by rejecting three types of differences. What are the three types of differences? One is called Sugata Bheda. Suppose a tree, or let's say a human being His head is one part, his hands are different. So it's called Sugata Bheda. So it is one human being, but different parts of his body. So there is a Bheda, there's a difference. So that difference doesn't exist in the supreme awareness. When you become aware of the spiritual unity and oneness of existence, because everything is an expression of supreme awareness, prajna, then you experience your unity and harmony and oneness with the whole existence. So Sugata Bheda means internal differences is ruled out. You feel one with the whole existence. Another difference is Sajatiya Bheda. So Sugata Bheda is one, Sajatiya Bheda is one. That is external differences. Two persons, two individuals. There's a difference. So that external difference is also ruled out. And the third difference is Vijadiya Bheda. I mean, you are a living being, but then the Jada Prapancha, the trees or the rocks and different entities, which are lifeless entities, there's a difference. So all possible differences are completely ruled out. Means these mantras, these descriptions are given to emphasize that feeling the experience of the mystical experience of spiritual unity and oneness of whole existence. So when you become aware of this, what happens? Prajna asman loka utkraminti musmin loki. So those who realize this experience, they will realize the immortality, they will realize the spiritual oneness and unity of the whole existence. So this spiritual affinity with the whole creation, based on the idea that everything in this world is an expression of prajna. Prajna means awareness, unqualified, pure awareness. Normally, when we use the word awareness, we say, I'm aware of something. I'm aware of this table. So that object is the table, and also my awareness. And then I may become aware of a book. There also, it's kind of vritti jnanam, means I become aware of the book. But suppose you remove the book and the table, from that awareness, it is pure awareness. So the highest supreme reality is depicted in this particular mantra as universal spiritual awareness. When we realize this and when we meditate upon this, what happens? We will experience that true meaning of Tattwamasi Mahavakya. So Tattwamasi, this is the most important and well-known Mahavakya. And based on the same analysis, we understand the spiritual unity and oneness of existence. That is the beauty of this Upanishad. So remember, this Upanishad is well known because it contains the Mahavakya Vichara, that is Prajnanam Brahma, which is a discussion going on among different spiritual seekers in an ancient Vedic hermitage, where they are asking the question, they're debating among themselves, what is the absolute truth that we should meditate upon? What's the nature of the eternal, the immortal, the absolute reality? So as a result of this discussion, they realized everything is the nature of awareness, the universal awareness. That is the special feature of this Upanishad. Now you can ask questions. I shall try to explain. I know this Upanishad is known so well known as Chandogya and Brihadaranyaka, and this Mahavakya also is not as well known as Tattwamasi Aham Brahmasmi, etc. But still, if you want to clarify more points, you are most welcome. I have tried within a short span of time to compress some of the ideas of the Upanishad. The Upanishad contains a lot of other ideas, It contains many other ideas which I am not going to explain right now. Different kinds of existence, different levels of spiritual journey, all mentioned here. But this third chapter is the most significant and the most important part of this Upanishad and the most philosophical part of the text. Thank you. Namaskar.
Hari Om Swamiji. Namaskar. So, Swamiji, I wanted to know the difference between Jnanam and Prajnanam. What is Prajna in relation to Jnanam?
The word Prajnanam is used if you happen to read this text. The word Prajnanam is used in two different senses here. In the Mahavakya, that's what I'm going to talk about. In the Mahavakya, Prajnanam means the universal awareness. Suppose, let us say, Ghatajnanam, the knowledge of Ghata, knowledge of the pot, and Padajnanam, knowledge of a cloth. Let us say Grandhajnanam, knowledge of book. So you find all these, Jnanam is there. Okay, the Jnanam is there. And then there is a book, pot, cloth, and so on, different entities there. You remove all these entities, different objects. Then what you have left? Jnanam. That Jnanam is Prajnanam. What is Prajnanam? Prajnanam is the pure awareness, which is not associated with anything. But in human speculation, this Prajnanam is experienced only as silence. You understand Prajnanam, the empirical sense, only when it is associated with an object. If you can think of this Jnanam without an object, it is called Prajnanam. So remember, in this particular long mantra, Prajnanam is used in another sense. In that context, Prajnana means Pratibha, the ability to respond quickly, with the quick repartee, etc. That is not the meaning what I'm talking about. In the Mahavakya, Prajnanam Brahma means universal awareness, consciousness, pure awareness. See, when I'm aware of this watch, my awareness is not pure because my awareness is linked to this object that is here on this table, my watch or the book or whatever it is. But suppose you take away the object, then what do you have? Pure jnana, pure awareness. That pure awareness is prajnana, and that pure awareness is universal.
Thanks, Swamiji.
Hello, Swamiji. This is Mark. And I've been reading Swami Prabhupada version of the Upanishads from the Breath of the Eternal. And at the end, there's a paragraph about the sage Vamadeva. It says, the sage Vamadeva, having realized Brahman as pure consciousness, departed this life, ascended to heaven, obtained all his desires, and achieved immortality. It seems like that in this context is just kind of thrown in. Could you elaborate more on what the meaning of this final paragraph is?
Yeah, okay. Now, you find here, sa etena prajnena atmana asman loka utkramayit anushmin lo surge loke sarvan kaman atma amruta samabhavad amruta samabhavad iti Aitareya Upanishad Tattwamayananda Prathama Pada. The sage Vamadeva's name is mentioned previous, but idea is the sage Vamadeva who experienced the Prajnanam Brahma, this awareness, supreme awareness, the all-pervading reality. He realized this truth And then after his passing away, he reached the highest celestial region, and eventually he became one with the truth. So, depending upon the spiritual fitness of the person, a sage can experience this while living in this world, and after experiencing this, after passing away, he will go to celestial regions, and then at the end of the kalpa, he becomes one with Brahman. So this is one kind of mukti, it's called liberation, it's called krama mukti. And some other sages will realize this truth. Even while living in this world, they'll realize this truth, and even in their daily activities, you can feel that they have this supreme awareness within. So this Upanishad mantra, this particular text refers to Vamadeva, who was an ancient Rishi, Vamadeva Rishi. His name is mentioned here. He after realized this, he realized the supreme truth. That prophecy, that result of this realization is mentioned at the end of the Tritiya Adhyaya, 3rd chapter also, which I read just now. Vamadeva's name comes later, so earlier it comes as an example of the great Vedic sage who realized this truth. It comes earlier.
Thank you.
So Swamiji, the first part of Aitareya Upanishad, it seems to discuss a little bit creation itself. What is the implication of that?
Yeah. So the point is, the Upanishad you find, the idea is mentioned here. Atma va idam agra asit. I mean, agre here means in the beginning. Beginning means before creation. So before creation, Atma was the only reality existed. And then the creation began. And creation itself, in Upanishadic philosophy, is not a kind of producing something. The same Atma, the same Brahman, it manifests in its effect form, karya bhava, karya rupa. So Vedanta doesn't accept the view that creation is real. Creation is only an appearance of the creator in gross form. When the creator, the Atman, is perceived in association with nama and rupa, names and forms, then it's called creation. So in the particular method of analysis called Vivartavada. Vivarta means apparent transformation. Suppose you have a lot of clay. From clay you make a pot. Really speaking, you are not made anything new, because even if you make 1,000 different utensils from the clay, and they are sitting in front of you, those vessels, or maybe that clay pot, even when it appears as a clay pot, is clay only. And before it took that form of a pot, it was clay. And you break it, then also it goes back to clay form. So even when it sits on the table in front of you, it looks like a particular shape and size, etc. But even then, can you take all the clay from the clay pot? No. It is inseparable, it is inherent. It's called Sambhavaya Sambandha. You cannot take clay from a clay pot. You cannot take gold from a golden ring. You cannot take. Why? Because it is gold only. When you see the gold in association with the name and form, which is superimposed upon it by a jewelry person, or when you see a clay pot with a particular shape and size, which are superimposed upon the clay by the pot maker, then you call it a clay pot. You break it, goes back to clay. And before it became a pot, it was clay. So even when it is sitting in front of you on the table, It is clay only. So where is pot then? It is only apparent transformation. It is not complete change. It is only apparent. In the sense, the cause itself appears to have become the effect, not really speaking. If it has really become the effect, then if you break the clay pot, it cannot go back to clay. If you melt the golden ring, it cannot go back to gold. So it is called vivarta. Vivarta means apparent transformation, not real transformation. So creation also is like that. Srishti is also like that. So this Upanishad also accepts the view, tadanupravisya satyatecha bhavat tasrishtva tadeva anupravisya satyatecha bhavat. Taittiriya Upanishad. After creating this world, the creator entered into creation and became one with it. It's a very wonderful description of the so-called creation in the language of metaphor and the figures of speech. It means, in order to make it clear that the creation is not different from the creator, the Upanishad tells you the creator created the creation and entered into it and became one with the creation. It is only a description, what you call a metaphor. It's a figurative description of creation to emphasize the point that creation is non-distinct and non-different from creator.
So I have follow-on questions, Swami. So what is the relationship of this to Purusha Suktam?
Oh yes, Purusha Suktam is essentially Advaitic. You find Sahasra Sisha Purusha Sahasrasha Sahasrapa Bhumim Vishwado Vrutva. Vrutva means Avrutva, Tadishta Dashankula. So Sahasra means infinite. So Purusha, Virat Purusha is described here as Sahasra Sirsha, the one with 1,000 heads. Sahasraksha, 1,000 eyes. Sahasrapa, 1,000 legs, and so on, feet, and so on. The idea is Sahasra means Asankhyan, infinite. The all-pervading nature, the omnipresent nature of the absolute reality is portrayed as the universal person in this particular Purusha Sutta. Purusha Sutta is pure Advaita only. When you describe somebody with heads everywhere, feet everywhere, hands everywhere, what does it mean? That reality is omnipresent or pervading. So remember, Vedic mantras should be studied literally, and then you should study it with the adhyatmic meaning, that is spiritual meaning. That is different. So for that you should study bhashyas, Sayana bhashyas, and those Vedic mantras which become part of the Upanishad, you should study Shankara bhashyas. So remember, Purusha itself means Puri Chaiteti Purusha. Puri means the city, this house, this fort, with the 9 doors opening, the 2 eyes, 2 ears, and 2 nostrils, and 2 opening below. So all these 9 Navadvara. So this body itself is portrayed as a city in which the divine spark, the divine reality is the inner resident, residing within. The divine reality is residing within. That is the real meaning of Purusha. So, Purusha Sukta also expresses the same reality. Pratibodha Vididam Madamehdi, the Upanishads also explain the same reality.
Thank you so much.
Any more questions? Most welcome. So if you don't have questions, I'm happy that all the questions, doubts have gone completely.
Swami, actually, I have one more question. So, you were talking about chapter 3. When it starts, it says the question is, who do we meditate upon? Right? So, does that mean that before we get to this point, it is established that meditating upon something, some sort of reality, some Atman, Brahman, is the means to attain that Brahman or Atman? Is it already established?
Yeah. Before the third chapter, there is a discussion on the Hiranyagarbha of Brahma as entering the Sharira, becoming part of the Sukshma Sharira, and that is one view. Another view as Chaitanyam, Paramatma Chaitanyam itself entering the body through Murdha. So like that, Hiranyagarbha entered through feet. Anyway, the mantras are the previous mantras. So I have time to discuss with that. So these two views are already being discussed in the earlier part till the end of the second chapter. So that is how the Upanishads has prepared the setting. Two types of entry of the Supreme Reality are indicated in this Upanishad mantra. So the third chapter is a continuation of that setting. So you find in the Upanishads, sometime before a discussion begins, a background is created. So that's how this, see for example, in this mantra, if you find Kaha ayam atma iti vayam upasmahe, you can find here. So there are two important reasons to keep in mind. One is, in the Rigveda Samhita itself, there is a statement, Hiranyagarbha entered body as Sukshma Sharira. And then in this Aitareya Upanishad itself mentioned somewhere earlier that Atma Chaitanyam entered the body, as and became Chidabhasa, Jiva Chaitanya. So one reference from the same Vedic tradition, another reference from the same Upanishad, that means Atma Chaitanyam entered the body through Murdha as became Jiva Chaitanya. So two ideas are to be kept in mind when we try to understand the first mantra, Koyam Atma iti vayam upasmake katara sa Atma. So how many Atmas are there? One is Sopadhika. Sopadhika means with attributes, with modifications. Apara Brahman is called. That is Hiranyagarbha. That is in the Vedas mentioned here, not here in this particular. Then Aitareya Upanishad, here itself there is a statement, that Atma Chaitanyam has entered this body and as became Chidabhasa or Jiva Chaitanya. So how many Atmas? Katara. Which of the two? Sa Atma. Which of the two is the real Atma? Yenava Rupam Pashyati. Is it by whose help is the Atman who helps us to see different things with our eyes? Yena tva shabdam sunodi. That Atma is the power that helps me to hear different things. Yena va grandhan ajignadi. Is it that Atma that helps me to smell things? Yena va vacham ka vyakarodi. Is it the Atma that helps me to speak, to make use of my power of speech? Yenava swaduja, aswaduja vijanadi. The Atman that helps me to understand what is swadu, what is appropriate, what is tasty, what is otherwise, the opposite of it. So, is it some kind of a power that helps me, that activates my senses, my karmendriyani, jnanendriyani, my senses of perception, senses of action? What is that? That's how the discussion begins. Remember, it is not that one person is asking the question, another person is saying no. It is a discussion going on among spiritual seekers. You find in ancient Vedic time, there were the Parishad Parishad means assemblies of learned men and women. Remember, Aitareya Upanishad refers to great women philosophers like Gargi, Maitreyi, and so on. So they used to assemble sometimes in king's courts. In the Aitareya Upanishad, Janaka was a king. In his court, there used to be assemblies of great philosophers. So here, they have gathered in one place in a Vedic hermitage. And maybe they are all students, but advanced students. So after finishing one course of study that particular day, in the evening, after Sandhya and after the evening oblations, prayers, they are gathered discussing what is that object of supreme knowledge? Whom should we meditate upon? Either Hiranyagarbha, the creator one, or the all-pervading supreme reality, Paramatma Chaitanya. That's how the discussion begins. So there's a background, a prelude to this discussion.
Thank you, Swamiji.
Yeah. So thank you, namaskar. So next session we will have a class on the Chandogya Upanishad. It's a fairly big Upanishad, second biggest after Brihadaranyaka. But again, it can only be a kind of an introduction because we have to speak for 1 hour only and then interaction will be there. You are most welcome. Thank you. Om Shanti 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 Harihi Om Tat Sat Sri Ramakrishna Arpanamastu. Yeah.